Do you ever wonder what is intended for or likely to be understood by only a small number? The traditional beliefs, customs, and stories of a community. A community not part of the mainstream, unconventional, peripheral, or extreme. Part of an anthology, a published collection of poems or other pieces of writing. This is Esoteric Lore. I'm your host, Edward Aponte, where I push you to ponder the fringes of folklore. The concept of levitation has been part of human fascination and myth for millennia. But the first recorded instances of levitation are often linked to religious and spiritual contexts, religious texts, and mythology. Buddhism, Christianity. Ancient civilizations, like the Egyptians, were depicted as possessing the power of flight, which can be considered a form of levitation. In Hindu scriptures, supernatural abilities, including levitation, are mentioned and as attainable by advanced yogis. The account of Jesus Christ walking on water is traditionally viewed as a miracle rather than an instance of levitation. In the context of Christian theology, this miracle is interpreted as a demonstration of Jesus' divine authority over nature. But for me, you look at it through the eyes of Tibetan monks or Calcutta yogis, Indian sages. If you put those lenses, you see Jesus walking on water as an act of levitation. In the 16th and 17th century, numerous accounts exist of individuals, particularly within religious contexts, experiencing levitation. One of the earliest well-documented cases is that of Saint Teresa of Avila, a Spanish mystic nun who lived in the 16th century. Her autobiography, written in the 1560s, described her experiences of levitation during prayer. In a unique article entitled "The Reluctant Levitator," according to her autobiography, Vida, no matter how much Saint Teresa sought to distance herself from levitation, belief in this phenomenon would only intensify among Catholics after her death, thanks in no small measure to her fame. During the 17th century, the beginning of the so-called Age of Reason, levitators kept popping up throughout the Catholic world, not just in Europe, but also in those places where Spain, Portugal, and France had colonies, and quite a few of them walked the earth or hovered over it at the same time as Isaac Newton was rushing empiricism and inductive reasoning to come up with his law of universal gravitation. Simultaneously, we have science and mysticism, levitation, coexisting at the same time. Another fascinating phase of the high magic of levitation is how the Oriental masters accomplished such a feat. The world-renowned hypnotist and magician of the mid-19th century, Armand McGill, in the book entitled The Secret World of Witchcraft, in the chapter on the sacred magic of Tibet, shares some insight. In the performance of the feat of levitation, the body of the master or the body of some other person whose body is controlled by the sage is seen to rise slowly in the air and then float around freely, buoyantly, as a piece of light wood floats upon the surface of the water. The phenomenon is by no means common, but in certain sacred places in Himalayas, it is certainly occasionally seen. The sages assert that the phenomena is caused by a peculiar application of prana directed and controlled by the proper techniques of rhythmic breathing. The principle of rhythmic breathing is held to play an important part in the producing of levitation. We are reminded in this regard of the familiar feat in which the body of a heavy person is lifted easily from the ground upon the fingertips of several persons who are breathing in rhythmic unison. The sages themselves say that they do not understand just why the body is raised into the air during the act of rhythmic breathing. They do know, however, the just how elements of applying the method and are bound by oath not to reveal it. For it is held as a great secret. They insist that only certain of their numbers were able to produce this levitation, the remainder never being able to get the knack of the teachers. They do not pretend to be able to account for the fact. They simply insist upon its truth. The sages say that they produce this phenomena principally by creating a strong mental picture of their body or the body of another, rising in the air and floating around as I have described, then projecting a strong current of prana in such a way as to neutralize the pull of gravitation. At the same time, they perform a certain kind of rhythmic breathing, which is a secret known will reveal to non-initiates. They claim that they are greatly fatigued after the feat, which indicates that the will is actively employed in the process. It is interesting to note in connection with levitation that in his dreams a person will eventually experience a sense of floating in space in a similar way, evidently overcoming the pull of gravitation. Few persons have not experienced this floating or flying sensation at some time in their lives. Moreover, there are certain ancient records recording instances, certain saints who in conditions of religious ecstasy were levitated. In most recent times, some spirit mediums have reported the phenomenon, attributing it to, quote, spirit powers, whereas the Tibetan masters say that it is due to purely natural, though generally unknown, forces, and that such mediums inadvertently called these forces into operation in some way without understanding their real nature. You may ask, how could such actual physical and material results be obtained without violating nature's laws? The explanation lies in the skillful employment of prana, projected and held firm by the concentrated thought and will of the master. Through this process, nature is compelled to, quote, speed up her process. For the sacred magic does not distort nature, it merely advances that which is generally conceded to be normal, thereby producing the supernormal. The laws of nature can never be defied. They can but be made more productive. If you like this video, please subscribe, share, and give us a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. See you next time.